Today's hearing took a dramatic turn as Senator Mazie Hirono confronted Defense Secretary Hegseth in one of the most intense exchanges we've seen in recent months. What started as a routine oversight session quickly escalated into a sharp rebuke over leadership, accountability, and the dangerous politicization of America's military.
Secretary Hegseth, you've had a tough start. At your confirmation hearing, my Democratic colleagues and I rightly questioned whether you had the requisite qualifications and experience to lead the DoD, the largest federal agency, especially given your checkered past, which included paying $50,000 in hush money to settle a sexual assault allegation against you and driving 2 veterans organizations into the ground. After only months on the job, our concerns about you have proven true, as far as I'm concerned. Instead of strengthening national security, you've turned the Pentagon into a dysfunctional mess. You are jeopardizing military operations and service members' lives with your unprecedented action of texting classified military plans to anyone who might stroke your ego. Leading the Department of Defense is more than just a PR campaign filled with photo ops. While you pose for cameras, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine continues unabated. Israel and Iran are also at war, in large part because your boss tore up a multilateral agreement former President Obama brokered with the UK, France, Germany, China, and Russia that curbed Iran's nuclear program and ambitions. Meanwhile, China advances in the Pacific as this regime undermines and attacks our allies. At a time when steady leadership is critical, we are confronted with crisis and instability. Mr. Secretary, close to 5,000 Marines and National Guards have been deployed to LA without the request or consent of the California governor or the Los Angeles mayor, Bass. Rather than calming the situation, this troop deployment is purposefully inflaming and escalates tensions. You claim lethality is your top priority. Do you plan to unleash this lethal force against U.S. citizens and civilians in LA and other cities?
Well, Senator, I would reject most of the characterization of that statement, including lethality against U.S. cities, when all of those National Guardsmen and Marines have conducted themselves with the utmost of professionalism, defending our federal agents, Americans, who deserve to be able to do their job to deport illegal immigrants after the previous administration allowed 21 million illegals to cross our border.
I am not here to listen to rhetorical responses. I would like to have a professional response that I would expect from somebody who is the Secretary of Defense. Millions of people peacefully demonstrated this weekend against the president acting like a king. Given this regime's dangerous policy of mobilizing troops inside the U.S., the politicizing of the military is a legitimate concern. So, given the dangerous policy of mobilizing troops inside the U.S., if ordered by the president, I'm going to ask you once again, to shoot peaceful protesters in the legs, would you carry out such an order from the president?
Senator, as I've said before, of course, I reject the premise of your question and the characterization that I would be given or are given unlawful orders. It's all meant to attempt to smear the commander-in-chief, and I won't fall for it.
Considering that the president in his first term actually ordered such a thing, it is not a premise that you can reject. He can order it, do the same thing. So you're, again, I think you would just follow what the president wants you to do. Let's face it, it is not normal to call up our troops in this way, and there is active litigation against this deployment. Will you follow a court's order regarding whether or not this deployment is legal? If the court says this deployment of troops into our cities is not legal, would you follow that court's order?
It's pending in the courts, Senator.
Well, when the court decides, would you follow the court's order, decision?
I don't believe district courts should be determining national security policy.
So you will not be following that.
When it goes to the Supreme Court, we'll see.
Court. And unless the president decides to appeal, there you have it. So I take it that you don't consider district court decisions to be legitimate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Mazie Hirono's blistering exchange with Defense Secretary Hegseth isn't just another heated moment in Washington. It's a window into something far more consequential. What unfolded in that hearing room speaks directly to the health of America's democracy, the independence of its military, and the moral compass of those entrusted with the nation's defense. When Hirono accused the secretary of turning the Pentagon into a dysfunctional mess, it wasn't just political theater. It was a warning about a dangerous shift, a shift from disciplined national defense to politicized military power. And that should concern every American, regardless of party. Let's start with the heart of the issue, the use of the U.S. military on American soil. The very idea that active duty troops or Marines would be deployed in cities like Los Angeles without the consent of local or state authorities strikes at one of the bedrock principles of the American system. The U.S. military exists to defend the nation from foreign threats, not to police its own citizens. The founders and generations of lawmakers that followed drew a deliberate constitutional line between civilian law enforcement and the armed forces. That line is what separates a democracy from a dictatorship. When Senator Hirono pressed the secretary on whether he had plans to unleash lethal force against U.S. citizens, she wasn't exaggerating. She was probing whether that line still means anything. Because history teaches us something chilling. When governments begin to blur that boundary, when the military becomes an instrument of political control rather than national defense, democracies begin to erode from within. The mere suggestion that American troops could be deployed to confront peaceful protesters should alarm everyone who values civil liberty and lawful governance. And the secretary's responses? They tell their own story. He dodged direct questions, refused to commit to following a court's order, and dismissed the legitimacy of district court rulings. Think about that for a moment. When a senior official in charge of the military implies that judicial decisions can simply be ignored if they don't align with the administration's preferences, we are looking at a direct challenge to the rule of law. In America, no leader, no matter how powerful, is above judicial review. Courts exist precisely to prevent unchecked authority. That's not a matter of politics, it's the foundation of constitutional government. Senator Hirono also touched on something broader, the corrosion of professionalism and accountability inside the Department of Defense. She accused the secretary of being more interested in photo ops and media appearances than in ensuring the Pentagon functions effectively. This isn't a superficial critique. It goes to the core of what good leadership means in national defense. The Pentagon is not a campaign stage. It is an institution that commands the lives of men and women in uniform, manages trillion-dollar budgets, and makes decisions that determine peace or war. When leadership prioritizes ego and image over substance and structure, the consequences ripple far beyond Washington. It affects military readiness, morale, and the credibility of U.S. power abroad. Hirono's frustration also reflects a deeper anxiety about the politicization of the military. The armed forces have always been seen as one of the last bastions of nonpartisan integrity in America, a place where service to country stands above political ideology. When that principle begins to fray, when military deployments or policies start to reflect partisan agendas rather than national interest, it endangers the very balance that sustains a free republic. A military that takes political cues risks becoming a weapon of internal control rather than a shield of external defense. There's also the ethical question that Hirono raised about unlawful orders. Her hypothetical, would you carry out an order to shoot peaceful protesters in the legs, was shocking on its face, but it wasn't random. It was rooted in real history. During the Trump administration, there were credible reports that such violent options had been discussed in response to domestic protests. Her question was a moral test disguised as a legal one. Would a defense secretary today have the courage to say no if a president issued an immoral or unconstitutional order? The refusal to answer clearly should make us all pause. Because what Hirono is really asking isn't just about Hegseth, it's about the system itself. Do our institutions still have the strength to stand up to unlawful power? Will senior officials still honor their oath to the Constitution above loyalty to any one person? Those are not abstract questions. They are the lifelines of a functioning democracy.